The Galactic Confederation had ruled over 3 million star systems for 3,000 years without firing a single shot in anger. Peace was their greatest achievement, their most sacred value. Wars were ancient history, something barbaric species once did before they learned civilization. Ambassador Kael'thon of the Altarian Council pressed his 4 elongated fingers against the cool metal of the observation deck aboard Nexus Prime, the massive orbital station that served as the Confederation's military headquarters. Through the transparent aluminum viewing screen, he watched orange flames consume the outer rim colonies. Each dying star system represented billions of lives lost. The Devourers had returned. These ancient horrors emerged from the dark void between galaxies every 50,000 years, like a cosmic plague that swept through inhabited space. The last. Time they came. Primitive civilizations fought them with crude nuclear weapons and basic energy shields. This time the galaxy was supposed to be ready. "Sir, we've lost contact with the Vegan system," Communications Officer Veltar announced. From her station, her crystalline voice, normally melodic like wind chimes, now trembled with fear. "That's the 15th system in 2 days." Kael'thon's forearms drooped in defeat. The Vegan system housed 12 billion souls across 7 inhabited worlds. Now, there was only silence where once thrived art, music, and philosophy. The Confederation's automated defense platforms, marvels of engineering that could precisely disable enemy vessels without killing a single crew member, were being consumed, faster than they could be deployed. "How many refugees made it out?" he asked quietly. "None, sir," Veltar whispered. "The Devourers don't take prisoners. They consume everything. Ships, stations, even the orbital debris." Defense Coordinator Mordak floated over from the tactical display, his gaseous form shimmering with distress patterns. As a member of the ethereal whisper species, he communicated through color changes in his translucent body, and right now he was cycling through deep purples and blacks, the colors of despair. "Our projections show complete galactic consumption within 60 standard days," Mordak reported, his voice like distant thunder. "The Devourers have evolved since their last appearance. They adapt to our weapons within hours. Our precision strike philosophy is useless against an enemy that regenerates." From molecular destruction. Around the command center, officers from dozens of species worked frantically at their stations. The elegant seraphim with their silver wings folded in concentration, the aquatic depth dwellers in their mobile water suits, their tentacles dancing across holographic interfaces, the crystalline resonators humming in harmonic frequencies as they coordinated communications across the galaxy. All of them represented civilizations that had grown soft during the long peace. Their weapons were designed to disable, not destroy. Their ships were built for exploration and trade, not war. Their soldiers were peacekeepers trained in negotiation and crowd control, not combat. "Sir," called out Tactical Officer Zephmar. From across the bridge, his insectoid features clicking nervously, "We're receiving reports from the Andromeda Relay Station. 3 Devourer hive ships have been spotted heading toward the core worlds." Kael'thon felt his heart sink. The core worlds held 20% of the galaxy's population. If they fell, the Confederation would collapse within days. "What about the ancient weapon caches?" he asked desperately. "Surely the Founders left something we can use." "All depleted or destroyed during the Great Pacification," Mordak replied, his form now shifting to resigned gray tones. 3,000 years ago, we made the conscious choice to eliminate all weapons of mass destruction. We believed we had evolved beyond such barbarism." The bridge fell into heavy silence, broken only by the soft hum of failing systems and distant explosions visible through the viewing screen. Every officer present knew they were witnessing the end of their civilization. "There is one option," whispered Defense Coordinator Mordak from across the bridge, his gaseous form barely visible as it flickered with reluctance. "The quarantine system, Sol 3. The bridge fell dead silent. Every being present knew about the violent. Primitives locked away in their small corner of space, too dangerous to be allowed among civilized species. 300 years ago, when first contact was made, the humans had been engaged in their 3rd global war. Their response to peaceful diplomatic overtures was to immediately design weapons capable of destroying the visiting ships. The Galactic Council had voted unanimously to quarantine them. Those creatures nearly destroyed their own world 7 times, Veltar said, her voice barely audible. They turned warfare into an art form. They created weapons that could crack planets. They're monsters, added Tactical Officer Zephmar, his insectoid wings buzzing anxiously. The reports from our first contact team described beings who glorified violence, who created entertainment from conflict scenarios. Kael'thon stared at the burning systems on his display. The choice was simple: certain extinction from the Devourers, or potential salvation from the one species the galaxy feared more than any ancient horror. "Send the transmission," Kael'thon ordered, his voice heavy with regret. "May the cosmos forgive us for what we're about to unleash." Deep in the Sol system, 300 light-years from the dying Confederation worlds, Admiral Lee Juno sat in her command chair aboard Lunar Base, humanity's hidden military headquarters, carved into the dark side of Earth's moon. Her dark eyes scanned the holographic display, showing the Devourer advance across galactic space. For 3 centuries, humanity had watched the galaxy from behind their quarantine barrier. They had learned alien languages, studied Confederation technology, and most importantly, they had prepared. While the galaxy pursued peace, humans had perfected war. Behind Admiral Juno, Captain Park Hana stood at attention, her hands clasped behind her back. The younger woman's face showed the same cold determination that had become humanity's signature expression over the centuries of isolation. "Mum, shall we respond?" Hana asked, though they both knew the answer. Juno's smile was winter cold, the expression of a predator that had been waiting patiently for the perfect moment to strike. Around them, Lunar Base hummed with activity as thousands of personnel prepared for humanity's return to galactic affairs. "Oh, we'll respond," Juno said softly. "Signal all fleets. It's time to remind the galaxy why they caged us." The war gods were awakening, and they were very, very angry. The quarantine satellites that had surrounded Earth's solar system for 3 centuries suddenly went dark. Not destroyed by enemy fire or system failure, they simply switched off, their blue warning lights fading to black one by one. The massive orbital platforms that had kept humanity caged like dangerous animals powered down in perfect synchronization. On Nexus Prime, Communications Officer Veltar stared at her readings in disbelief. "Sir, the Sol quarantine grid has gone offline. All 700 satellites are showing 0 energy output." Ambassador Kael'thon rushed to her station, his forearms trembling as he reviewed the data. "That's impossible. Those satellites were designed to operate independently. Even if humans destroyed half of them, the others would maintain the barrier." "Sir," Veltar's voice cracked, "I don't think they destroyed them. The shutdown sequence was initiated from within each satellite simultaneously. Someone had access to the master control codes." The implications hit Kael'thon like a physical blow. The quarantine satellites had been built with Confederation technology 300 years ago. If humans could control them, it meant they had been studying, understanding, and probably improving upon alien science for centuries. Across the galaxy, every surviving Confederation monitoring station detected the same terrifying phenomenon. Massive energy signatures were emerging from previously empty space throughout the Sol system. What appeared to be asteroids suddenly unfolded into sprawling shipyards. Dead moons cracked open to reveal hidden military bases. Even the gas giant Jupiter's storms began to shift, revealing camouflaged orbital stations that had been hiding in the planet's electromagnetic field. The humans had been building in secret for 300 years. Admiral Lee Juno's image appeared simultaneously on every surviving Confederation vessel across 17 star systems. The transmission bypassed all security protocols, overrode all communication barriers, and displayed on screens that weren't even supposed to be capable of receiving external signals. The human woman's face was calm, almost serene, but her dark eyes held the cold intelligence of a predator that had been planning this moment for centuries. "Greetings, Galactic Confederation," she began, her voice carrying across millions of light years without any detectable transmission lag. "We received your request for assistance." Her smile was sharp as a blade, and every alien watching felt their species' ancient instincts scream danger warnings. 300 years ago, you quarantined us because you feared our nature. You called us violent primitives, too dangerous for civilized company. You locked us away like wild animals that might bite." Her expression never changed, but something deadly flickered in her eyes. "Today you'll remember why." Captain Kim Tae stepped into view beside her, his scarred hands clasped behind his back. The human male's face bore the marks of old battles, a thin scar across his left cheek, another above his right eyebrow. These weren't the soft features of a diplomat or scientist. This was a warrior who had seen real combat. "The Devourers have consumed 17 systems in the past week," Kim Tae stated matter-of-factly. "They've killed over 200 billion sentient beings. They've devoured entire worlds, left nothing but empty space where civilizations once flourished." He paused, letting the numbers sink in. "We will ensure they consume no more." From her command post on the Outer Rim monitoring station, Watchful Eye, Colonel Oh Min observed the spectacle through her tactical display. As the station's senior military advisor, she had been tracking human activity in the Sol system for decades, filing reports that her superiors consistently ignored. Now she watched those reports become terrifying reality. Human fleets were emerging from locations that had shown no signs of artificial construction. Asteroid mining operations revealed themselves as massive shipyards, their rocky exteriors falling away like shed skin to expose gleaming metal construction bays. Hidden bases carved into dead moons, powered up with energy signatures that made Confederation dreadnoughts look like children's toys. The ships themselves were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, where Confederation vessels were elegant. Curves and artistic flourishes, these human warships were angular, aggressive geometry. Every line spoke of violence barely contained. Their hulls were deep black, absorbing sensor sweeps and making them difficult to track. Strange protrusions and weapon mounts covered their surfaces, like the spines of some predatory creature. "My stars," whispered her aide, a young resonator named Harmonic 77. "How many ships are there?" Colonel Oh Min ran the calculations, her webbed fingers dancing across her holographic interface. "Initial count shows over 1,500 vessels emerging from the Sol system alone, but that can't be right. The humans don't have the industrial capacity for—" Her words died as more ships appeared, and more. The seemingly empty space around Earth's solar system was revealing a hidden armada that must have taken centuries to build. "All units, this is Admiral Juno," came the broadcast across all frequencies. Her voice reached every Confederation ship, every monitoring station, every surviving colony. "Rules of engagement are simple. The Devourers wanted to hunt civilized species. Today they become the prey." Lieutenant Choi Da-eun felt her pulse quicken as she manned the weapons console of the battleship Iron Resolve. The massive human warship had been disguised as a space construction platform for over 50 years, hiding in plain sight while Confederation scouts made their routine patrols. Now its true nature was revealed. 2 kilometers of pure destructive potential, armed with weapons that the galaxy had never imagined. Around her, the bridge crew worked with calm efficiency. No panic, no uncertainty, just the smooth coordination of professionals who had trained for this moment their entire lives. Every human on every ship knew their role in what was coming. "Weapon systems online," reported Tactical Officer Bae Soo-min from her station. "All targeting solutions locked and loaded." "Engineering reports all systems green," called out Chief Engineer Nam Ji-ho. "Fusion reactors at optimal power. We're ready for extended combat operations." Choi Da-eun studied her weapon displays with satisfaction. Humanity had spent 3 centuries not just building ships, but perfecting the art of destruction. They had studied every recorded battle in galactic history, analyzed every weapon system, identified every weakness in Confederation military doctrine. The galaxy had made a crucial mistake. They had assumed that quarantine meant isolation. They thought humans were trapped behind their barriers, cut off from galactic civilization. In reality, humanity had been watching, learning, and preparing for the day when they would be needed or wanted. The Devourers had given them both. Across 17 star systems, Confederation commanders watched their sensors with growing amazement and terror. The human fleet wasn't just emerging, it was deploying in perfect military formation. These weren't the crude vessels of a primitive species finally allowed to join galactic society. These were the warships of a civilization that had spent 3 centuries doing nothing but preparing for war. The galaxy had caged humanity because they feared what humans might do if left free. Now they were about to discover that 300 years of forced isolation had only made them more dangerous, more focused, and infinitely more angry. The war gods had been released from their prison, and they were very, very ready to remind the universe why they had been locked away in the first place. The first engagement came at the Kepler Nebula, where swirling clouds of cosmic dust and stellar debris created a natural maze that had hidden Devourer forces for weeks. Captain Yunjie stood on the bridge of the destroyer Silent Thunder as his ship dropped out of hyperspace directly behind a cluster of Devourer hive vessels. The aliens were massive biomechanical monstrosities, each one the size of a small moon. Their hulls pulsed with organic rhythms, while mechanical components jutted from their surfaces like metallic tumors. Sensor arrays that looked like giant insect eyes swiveled to track the new arrival, and weapon ports began to glow with hungry energy. "Contact," reported Navigator Kim Hee-jin from her station. 3 hive ships, displacement approximately 15 kilometers each. They're powering weapons. The Devourers had consumed thousands of worlds over millions of years. They had faced every type of weapon the galaxy could produce. Plasma cannons, particle beams, gravitational disruptors, even exotic matter projectors. They had adapted to everything, evolved countermeasures to every threat. They had never faced humans. "Fire pattern Alpha," Captain Yunjie ordered calmly. The Silent Thunder's main batteries opened up with weapons that shouldn't have existed. Kinetic projectiles accelerated to significant fractions of light speed, punched through Devourer armor that had shrugged off Confederation battleship salvos. The alien vessels recoiled as their biomechanical hulls sprouted massive wounds that sparked with electrical discharge, but the destroyer was just the opening act. They never saw the second wave coming. Commander Han Soo-jin led her squadron of 12 stealth fighters through the nebula's electromagnetic interference, their ships practically invisible to conventional sensors. Each fighter was barely 50 meters long, tiny compared to the massive Devourer hives, but they carried antimatter torpedoes that violated every galactic treaty ever signed. The Confederation had banned antimatter weapons 3,000 years ago after witnessing their devastating effects during the synthetic wars. Too dangerous, they declared, too destructive for civilized warfare. But humans had never signed those treaties, and they had spent centuries perfecting what the galaxy had abandoned. "Ghost Squadron, this is Ghost Leader," Han Soo-jin transmitted on the encrypted tactical channel. "Target their neural clusters. We've studied their anatomy for 50 years. Hit the brain stems behind the primary sensor arrays." Her fighters moved through space like deadly shadows, using the nebula's charged particles to mask their approach. Each pilot had trained for decades in stealth combat, learning to fly ships that were more like guided missiles than traditional fighters. "Ghost 3 target acquired," reported Lieutenant Park Min-woo. His fighter's targeting system locked onto a pulsing nerve center near the lead hive ship's bow. "Ghost 7, locked and loaded," confirmed Lieutenant Shin Bo-ra, her antimatter. "Torpedo armed and ready. All units, make it quick, make it clean," Commander Han Soo-jin ordered. "Fire." 12 antimatter torpedoes streaked across space, their warheads containing barely a gram of antimatter each. When they struck the Devourer neural clusters, the results were spectacular. Matter and antimatter annihilated each other in perfect conversion, releasing energy that turned sections of the massive alien ships into expanding spheres of superheated plasma. The Devourers, who had consumed thousands of worlds and adapted to countless weapons, suddenly found themselves facing something completely outside their experience. The biomechanical creatures that formed their living ships began writhing in agony as their neural networks overloaded. Tentacles the size of skyscrapers lashed out randomly. Weapon ports fired in all directions, and their perfect coordination collapsed into chaos. The human ships moved like predators closing in for the kill. No wasted motion, no unnecessary risks, just surgical precision targeting every weakness their centuries of observation had revealed. Secondary explosions detected, reported Tactical Officer Ju Yun-hee aboard the Silent Thunder. Their power, cores are going critical. Captain Yoon-jae watched the display with satisfaction. All units maintain distance, let them cook themselves. The largest Devourer hive ship, a creature that had personally devoured the Centauri colonies, began to tear itself apart as its own biomechanical systems turned against each other. Organic components tried to heal damage while mechanical systems continued firing, creating a cascade failure that spread throughout its massive bulk. Aboard the flagship War's End, positioned at a safe distance from the battle, Major Lee Da-som monitored the biosignatures of the dying Devourer vessels through her advanced sensor array. The human medical officer had spent decades studying captured Devourer tissue samples, learning how their hybrid biology functioned. "Ma'am, the remaining hives are trying to retreat," she reported to Admiral Juno. "They're forming up for a jump." To the Vale Nebula, Admiral Juno stood before the main display, watching the wounded Devourers attempt to flee the ambush that had cost them 3 of their strongest vessels. Her expression didn't change, but those who knew her well could see the cold satisfaction in her eyes. "Let them run," she said quietly. "Colonel Song is waiting." At the Vale Nebula, 200 light-years away, Colonel Song Min had positioned his fleet in a formation that would have baffled Confederation tacticians. Instead of the traditional battle line or defensive sphere, his ships were arranged in what appeared to be random clusters scattered throughout the nebula's outer edge. It wasn't random at all. "Sensors detect hyperspace distortion," reported his communications officer, Lieutenant Kang Siri. "Multiple large signatures incoming." "Right. On schedule," Colonel Song replied. "All units maintain position. Let them commit to the exit vector." The fleeing Devourers emerged from hyperspace exactly where human calculations had predicted they would. The nebula's gravitational fields made only one exit point viable for ships of their size, and Colonel Song had been waiting there for 6 hours. As the massive alien vessels materialized in normal space, they immediately triggered the quantum mines that human engineers had spent decades developing. The weapons didn't explode in the traditional sense. Instead, they created cascading temporal distortions that trapped the Devourers in bubbles of accelerated time. "All ships, fire at will," Colonel Song commanded. The space around the nebula erupted in controlled destruction. Human vessels that had been hiding in the nebula's dense regions opened fire with weapons that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. Gravitational torpedoes twisted space-time around their targets. Quantum disruptors unraveled molecular bonds at the subatomic level. Temporal mines created pockets where time moved at different rates, tearing the biomechanical Devourers apart, as parts of their bodies aged centuries in seconds. The Confederation observers watching from their monitoring stations felt their understanding of warfare shatter completely. For 3,000 years, they had pursued precision weapons designed to disable enemy vessels while minimizing casualties. Their military doctrine emphasized restraint, proportional response, and diplomatic solutions. Humanity had taken a different path entirely. These weren't precision strikes intended to disable. These were weapons designed for one purpose: complete annihilation of the enemy. Every human tactic, every weapon system, every strategic decision was calculated to inflict maximum damage with ruthless efficiency. The Devourers, ancient horrors that had survived since the galaxy's youth, found themselves outmatched for the first time in millions of years. Their ability to adapt and evolve meant nothing against weapons that destroyed them faster than they could comprehend what was happening. In less than 30 minutes, 7 Devourer hive ships, each one capable of consuming an entire star system, had been reduced to expanding clouds of debris and exotic particles. Humanity hadn't just learned to fight during their 3 centuries of quarantine. They had perfected the art of killing, turning warfare into a science so advanced that it resembled magic to those who witnessed it. The galaxy was beginning to understand what they had really unleashed. The Devourer mothership. Eternal hunger drifted through the Omega sector, like a living nightmare made of metal and flesh. Its biomechanical bulk stretched across 3,000 kilometers, larger than most moons, its surface writhing with organic tentacles, while mechanical weapon systems tracked anything that moved within 1,000,000 kilometers. This ancient horror had consumed entire star systems, devoured civilizations that had stood for millennia, and turned countless worlds into empty husks of rock and metal. It had never known defeat in 50,000 years of existence. Captain Seo. Wu Jin was about to change that. Standing in the assault bay of the human strike cruiser Blade Runner, she watched through the reinforced viewports as her target grew larger on approach. Her powered armor gleamed under the harsh lighting, each piece of the advanced suit representing centuries of human engineering focused on one goal, making soldiers into something more than human. "Ma'am, we're detecting massive bioelectrical activity throughout the target," reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Choi Min-ho. "The creature is definitely aware of our approach." "Good," Wu Jin replied, checking her weapon systems one final time. "I want it to know we're coming." Behind her, 47 enhanced human soldiers prepared for what military historians would later call the most audacious boarding action in galactic history. Each soldier wore powered armor that amplified their strength tenfold and enhanced their reflexes to superhuman levels. Their weapons were compact fusion rifles that could punch through any known armor, and their tactical implants allowed them to coordinate as a single deadly organism. The Devourers had evolved over millions of years to consume fear. They fed on the terror of their victims, growing stronger as their prey grew more desperate. They had perfected psychological warfare, using the screams of dying civilizations to break the will of those who might resist. They had never encountered humans who felt no fear. 30 seconds to impact, announced the pilot, Lieutenant Yang Su-jung. Kinetic harpoons armed and ready. Through the viewports, the mothership's surface revealed itself in horrifying detail. Organic tissue pulsed between mechanical components. Weapon ports that looked like massive eyes tracked their approach, and defensive systems began powering up with energy signatures that could vaporize normal spacecraft. "All units, this is Reaper 1, Captain Wu Jin transmitted to her boarding parties. "Remember your training. These things are big, they're ugly, and they're hungry. We're going to feed them something they can't digest." The kinetic harpoons fired with the force of orbital bombardment systems, their armored tips designed to punch through any known material. The Eternal Hunger's biomechanical hull, which had shrugged off the combined fire of Confederation battle fleets, cracked and ruptured as the human weapons tore massive wounds in its surface. Atmosphere vented from the breaches in spectacular geysers of alien gases, but the mothership was too massive to be seriously damaged by simple decompression. What mattered was that the humans now had entry points. "Go! Go! Go!" Wu Jin shouted as her team launched from the assault bay in individual drop pods. The pods, each one a miniature spacecraft armed with its own weapons and shields, streaked across the gap between ships like angry meteors. Devourer defensive systems tried to intercept them, but the pods were too small, too fast, and too well armored for the massive alien weapons to track effectively. Captain Wu Jin's pod struck the mothership's hull first, its shaped charges blowing a perfect entry hole. Through layers of organic armor and mechanical components, she kicked through the breach into an environment that would have driven most species insane with terror. The interior of the mothership was a nightmare landscape of pulsing organic walls lined with mechanical components that seemed to watch her with malevolent intelligence. The air was thick with spores and bioelectrical discharges, while distant screams echoed through corridors that twisted in directions that hurt to look at. "Squad 2, take the neural nexus," Wu Jin ordered, her powered armor's systems automatically, filtering the toxic atmosphere, while her targeting computer identified threats in the alien architecture. "Squad 3, plant the charges on the power distribution nodes." The Devourers inside the mothership were creatures of pure nightmare, biomechanical horrors that combined the worst aspects of insect, machine, and something far worse. Some stood 3 meters tall with razor-sharp limbs that could slice through steel. Others were smaller but faster, skittering across walls and ceilings like metallic spiders. All of them moved with the fluid grace of perfect predators. They rushed toward the human invaders, expecting to feast on terror and despair. Instead, they met Sergeant Young Min. The enhanced human soldier stood 2 meters tall in his powered armor. But what made him truly dangerous wasn't his physical capabilities. It was his complete absence of fear. His tactical implants fed him targeting data faster than conscious thought. His enhanced reflexes let him move between raindrops, and his fusion rifle never missed. The first devourer that reached him was a creature twice his size with claws that could shred tank armor and mandibles that dripped with acid. Young Min met its charge head-on, his powered fist punching through its biomechanical chest plate while his rifle burned a hole through another attacker behind it. "Contact front," he reported calmly, his voice steady as he fought creatures that had been the stuff of galactic nightmares for millions of years. Multiple hostiles, engaging. The battle inside the mothership became a symphony of controlled violence. Human soldiers moved through the organic corridors like deadly ghosts, their tactical coordination allowing them to fight as a single entity with 48 minds. Where the devourers expected panic and confusion, they found disciplined professionals who treated the impossible alien architecture like just another battlefield. Above the mothership, Commander Park Ye-jin watched the boarding action from her cruiser's bridge through real-time tactical feeds. Her sensor officer was tracking the human teams as they moved deeper into the massive alien vessel, leaving a trail of destroyed devourer defenders behind them. "Ma'am, Captain Wu Jin's team is requesting reinforcements," reported communications officer Lee Dabin. "They're encountering heavier resistance near the neural nexus." Commander Park Ye-jin studied the tactical display, watching as red dots representing devourer forces converged on the human boarding parties. Any normal military commander would have immediately sent backup to prevent their forces from being overwhelmed. "Denied," came Admiral Juno's voice through the comm, her tone as cold as deep space. "Wu Jin's team doesn't need help. They need room to work." Inside the mothership, the devourers were discovering something that shattered their understanding of prey and predator relationships. For millions of years, they had been the apex hunters of the galaxy, feeding on civilizations that fought desperately just to survive their attacks. The humans weren't fighting to survive. They were fighting to win, and they would sacrifice anything to achieve victory. Captain Wu Jin reached the neural nexus, a massive chamber where organic neural pathways connected to mechanical control systems in a web of pulsing bioelectrical activity. This was the mothership's brain, the central consciousness that controlled its planet-killing capabilities. "Charges placed," reported Sergeant Young Min as he attached fusion explosives to critical neural junctions. "Timer set for 60 seconds. All. Team's extraction countdown initiated," Wu Jin announced. "Move like your lives depend on it." The human soldiers began their fighting withdrawal through corridors now filled with every devourer on the ship. But instead of a desperate retreat, it was a controlled tactical movement designed to inflict maximum damage while minimizing their own casualties. Every human step was calculated, every shot precisely aimed, every movement part of a larger strategy that turned their extraction into another devastating attack. When the mothership's neural core went critical, Captain Seo Wu Jin and her team were already aboard their extraction shuttle, watching through the armored viewports as the massive alien vessel began tearing itself apart from the inside. The eternal hunger, which had devoured star systems and terrorized the galaxy for millennia, died like any other biological creature, screaming in frequencies that made nearby space itself vibrate with pain. "One down," Wu Jin reported calmly to Admiral Juno, her voice showing no more emotion than if she had just completed a routine training exercise. "Proceeding to the next target." Across the galaxy, Confederation observers watched in horrified fascination as humanity dismantled their ancient enemy with methodical precision. The humans weren't just defeating the devourers, they were hunting them down with the patient efficiency of apex predators who had finally found worthy prey. The war gods had returned to the galaxy, and they were everything the universe had feared. They would be. The last devourer hive fell at the terminus system, its biomechanical bulk collapsing into twisted wreckage as human fusion torpedoes tore through its neural cores. The ancient horror that had terrorized the galaxy's edge for centuries died with a psychic scream that echoed across subspace, marking the end of a threat that had consumed dozens of worlds. Admiral Lee Juno stood on the bridge of her flagship, Retribution, watching the alien vessels burn in the void like fallen stars. The massive command ship's armored hull stretched for 3 kilometers, its weapon arrays still glowing from the final battle. Through the reinforced viewports, she could see the debris field that had once been humanity's greatest challenge, chunks of organic armor mixed with mechanical components drifting in the cold darkness of space. Behind her, the combined human fleet stretched across the star system like a metallic constellation. Over 2,000 ships of war that the galaxy never knew existed, their angular hulls reflecting the light of distant suns. Battleships the size of cities floated alongside sleek destroyers and nimble cruisers, each one representing centuries of human engineering focused on a single purpose: the complete mastery of warfare. The bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, their faces showing the calm satisfaction of professionals who had just completed the most successful military campaign in galactic history. In less than 6 months, humanity had emerged from quarantine and systematically destroyed an enemy that had plagued civilized space for millions of years. "Ma'am," Captain Kim Tae reported from his station, his scarred hands dancing across holographic controls. "Confederation vessels are requesting permission to approach. Long-range sensors show a diplomatic convoy led by Ambassador Kael'thon's personal ship." Admiral Juno studied the tactical display, noting how the alien vessels approached with their weapons powered down and shields at minimum, the universal sign of peaceful intent. After watching humanity tear apart the Devourers with ruthless efficiency, the Confederation was taking no chances. "Let them come," she said quietly, "but maintain battle stations. I want them to see what they're dealing with." The Confederation delegation arrived in small diplomatic vessels that looked like elegant works of art compared to the brutal functionality of human warships. Their hulls were smooth curves and graceful lines, designed by species that had forgotten what real war looked like. As they approached the human fleet, their pilots must have felt like children approaching a pack of sleeping wolves. Ambassador Kael'thon's flagship was a beautiful crystalline structure that caught and refracted starlight in patterns that would have been gorgeous under other circumstances. Now it seemed fragile, almost pathetic, as it docked with the Retribution's massive bulk. The meeting took place in Admiral Juno's command conference room, a stark chamber lined with displays showing human fleet positions across the galaxy. "Ambassador?" Kael'thon entered with his usual diplomatic entourage, representatives from a dozen species, all of them trying to hide their fear behind professional masks. The Altarian ambassador's 4 arms trembled slightly as he took his seat across from the human delegation. His relief at the Devourer's defeat was obvious, but it was overshadowed by a new fear. The humans had won too easily, too completely. The ancient enemy that had required the combined might of the galaxy to barely contain had been eliminated by a single species in less than a year. "Admiral Juno," Kael'thon began, his voice carefully controlled despite the stress patterns visible in his bioluminescent skin patches, "the Galactic Confederation offers its deepest gratitude for your intervention. The threat that has haunted our nightmares for millennia has been eliminated through your decisive action." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "We hope this marks a new era of cooperation between our peoples. The Confederation would be honored to formally welcome humanity as full members of galactic civilization." Admiral Juno studied the alien ambassador with cold, dark eyes that seemed to look right through him. Around the table, her senior officers maintained the same predatory stillness that had become humanity's signature expression. These weren't diplomats or scientists. They were warriors who had just proven themselves the most dangerous species in the galaxy. "Cooperation requires equality, Ambassador," she said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "For 3 centuries you quarantined us like dangerous animals. You called us violent primitives too unstable for civilized company. You locked us away behind energy barriers and forgot we existed." Her smile was sharp as a blade. "Today you've learned why." Colonel Omin stepped forward from her position near the wall, her scarred face impassive. The human officer's left eye was artificial, replaced after some long-ago battle, and her mechanical hand clicked softly as she gestured toward the tactical displays. "The quarantine is ended," she announced with military precision. "Human patrol. Fleets will now be deployed along the galaxy's borders. We will protect what you cannot, defend what you will not, and eliminate threats that you're too weak to handle." The alien delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Several species had never seen humans in person before, and the reality was more intimidating than their reports had suggested. These weren't the crude barbarians they had imagined. They were sophisticated predators who had spent centuries perfecting the art of war. "And if we refuse this protection?" Ambassador Kael'thon asked quietly, though they all knew the answer. Admiral Juno's smile grew colder, and every alien in the room felt their species' ancient survival instincts screaming danger warnings. "Then you'll discover that the Devourers weren't the most dangerous species in this galaxy, Ambassador. They were simply the hungriest." The implication hung in the air like a death sentence. The humans weren't offering protection. They were announcing conquest wrapped in diplomatic language that fooled no one. We will need to consult with the Confederation Council," Kael'thon stammered. "Of course," Admiral Juno replied graciously. "Take all the time you need. Our fleets will wait." As the Confederation delegation departed, their ships fleeing the human fleet like frightened children running from monsters, Captain Park Hana joined Admiral Juno at the massive viewing screen that dominated one wall of the conference room. Through the transparent aluminum, they could see human warships taking up positions throughout the system. "Think they'll accept the new arrangement?" Hana asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Admiral Juno watched a squadron of human destroyers sweep past, their weapon systems tracking anything that moved. "They don't have a choice. We gave them peace for 3,000 years while we were locked away. Now they'll have security whether they want it or not." Across the galaxy, human fleets were already taking position around major worlds and critical trade routes. The elegant Confederation monitoring stations found themselves sharing space with angular human battleships. Peaceful colonies that had never seen military vessels suddenly had human cruisers patrolling their systems. The age of gentle diplomacy was over. On worlds throughout civilized space, populations watched their skies and saw new stars, human ships, maintaining permanent overwatch positions. Some species welcomed the protection, grateful to have guardians who could actually defend them from threats. Others resented the implied occupation, the constant reminder that they were no longer masters of their own destiny. But resentment meant nothing against the cold reality of military power. The war gods had awakened after 3 centuries of forced slumber, and they had no intention of returning to their cage. Humanity had been quarantined because the galaxy feared what they might become if left unchecked. Now that fear had been proven completely justified. The Devourers were gone, eliminated with a thoroughness that shocked even the humans themselves. But in destroying one ancient evil, the galaxy had awakened something potentially worse. A species that viewed war not as a last resort, but as the ultimate solution to any problem. The galaxy would be safe from external threats. Human fleets would patrol every border, human weapons would guard every world, and human soldiers would stand ready to fight any enemy that dared challenge civilized space. Whether the galaxy wanted that protection or not was no longer relevant. The humans had decided, and their decision was final. In the depths of space, Admiral Lee Juno stood alone on her flagship's observation deck, watching the stars that now belonged to humanity's protection. The quarantine was over, the ancient enemy was dead, and a new order was rising from the ashes of the old. The war gods had returned to claim their birthright, and the universe would never be the same. The end.